Hello, my name is Molly. Welcome to my channel. I wanted to do a quick video about releasing and what that means to me, and then how to actually do it, how to actually release something. So we are in the energy right now of a full moon, and a lot of people talk about a full moon release or releasing things. That does seem to be a little more of a spiritual term, if you will. But we also do talk about this just in everyday life when someone will have something happen, and perhaps you'll hear someone say, you gotta let that go. You gotta, move on from that thing. So this is certainly an idea that we hold, through all of us. But how do you do that? How do you release something? How do you move on from something, especially when something just is very traumatic or it's constantly happening? So there's a couple things here that I want to touch on, hopefully fairly briefly. So this obviously has a lot of layers to it, but I'm going to try to do a really brief overview of it. So first of all, let's kind of talk about the idea of living here, okay, in this experience from a higher perspective. So the reason why we say higher perspective is because it's this idea that we're probably not going to get the answers that we want or any kind of real understanding if we stay in this human view. And by that, I mean, if we're just looking at survival, if we're just looking at shelter or just having an intimate relationship with someone, or just putting food on the table, if we're kind of staying in that understanding, a lot of these events and a lot of these things that happen in our lives are just going to kind of seem random, probably, or, you just have really bad luck, or, there's a variety of things. Oh, my family is just terrible, but what are you going to do? Kind of energy there. So when you feel like you're just stuck in something or you're a victim of circumstances, then you're going to probably continue to repeat these same cycles and these same situations over and over again. And then even though you may say, oh, I'd love to release that, if you don't really understand what you're releasing and you don't really get why you even had to deal with it in the first place, then you're probably just going to keep continuing it, right? You're not going to be able to get anything from it, and you're certainly not going to be able to release it because it doesn't make any sense why it was there in the first place. So I think that that's an important basis to start with. This idea that we're not just victims of our life, that we are here to learn and grow, and that there's a higher perspective of the things that we go through. Okay, for example, let's say that you just have really bad luck in relationships. Okay, these things just keep happening. You just keep picking the wrong person, and this person didn't respect me or value me, or the case may be. More than likely, that's because you are not respecting yourself or valuing yourself. Okay, and I know that can trigger some people, but feel into that. Are you being respectful of yourself? Are you valuing yourself? Are you listening to yourself? There's a lot of levels here. So this can come in a lot of ways, but I think that's a pretty basic one for most of us. That doesn't need to only be in a romantic relationship. Okay, that very often comes into play in family dynamics, the workplace, it really anywhere in your life, right? So if there is something that you are seeing time and time and time again, take a moment, try to pull yourself out of just the emotional, frustration of it all, or the anger. Certainly usually leads you to much clarity, but say, okay, am I taking care of myself? Am I, listening to myself? Am I valuing myself? All these levels here. Okay. Then once you're able to look at that, okay, you're able to look at the situation and say, I get that. Okay. You know what? I wasn't valuing myself. I was allowing myself to be put in these positions or to have these experiences, or, even if you say, oh, well, I have to work because I have to put food on the table, so I have to go into this place, be careful with that, because then you're just saying, well, I have to, I'm a victim, right? That's the only choice. I mean, there are other choices out here. And I know that again can trigger people, but take a second, are there other jobs? Are there other ways of making money? Are there other people out there to be in a relationship with? Do you have to have that specific family dynamic, or can you set a boundary? Can you speak up and say, from your heart, right? Anger doesn't usually get us there, but can you say, this is feeling stifling for me, or whatever the case may be, right? This goes across our lives. So this can be in just any area. But once you've taken that moment to look at these situations and you get your lesson, you can pull a strong lesson from that. Then you really want to take a moment, and this again can be a little tricky, but you want to be grateful that you had that experience. Okay? Perhaps you had this really bad, tough, traumatic experience. Maybe it wasn't that, but let's go there. And then you want to say, you know what? Because of that, I was able to pull this lesson from it. Okay? And thank you. Thank you for this lesson. I see that I wasn't valuing myself, or I see that I wasn't listening to myself, or whatever the case may be. Okay, so you want to find that gratitude in there. And I know that sometimes this can be tricky, especially when we're dealing with a really tough situation. But this is the heart of it. Okay, if you can go in there and for whatever reason you felt you're on a higher level, that you could handle whatever was thrown at you, okay, or you made choices that's where you ended up, and then you say, you know what, I do have that strength, okay, I was able to pull this lesson from that, I was able to learn this from that, and then thank you for the opportunity to learn from this, and now I have learned from it, I am grateful for the experience, now we can release it. Okay, so we really literally want to get in there, and sometimes it can be, writing is very helpful. It's really powerful. A lot of people can find a huge release in just writing about it, tapping into it. And then don't forget, as we release, it's not like a one-off usually, especially with these more difficult things. Certainly if it's something that you've dealt with since childhood, or a pattern you found yourself in, again, just like a cycle, right? A pattern, we learn and we release and we heal in the same way. Okay, so you may say, okay, I am done with that. I just, there's nothing left. And you find it still kind of showing up in your life or in your mind or wherever it might be. It's because it's usually just a cycle and you do things in layers. So we're going to start with maybe that big layer, which is the clarity of it. Oh, wow, I really wasn't listening to myself, or I really wasn't valuing myself. So we start with that really first, that big layer, and then that's a huge emotion. But then if something else comes up, it's not that you did it wrong. Excuse me. It's just that there's just more layers. Maybe there's a different perspective, maybe there's a different understanding for you, but you want to become aware of it and then tap into it and say, okay, what did I not get from this? What did I not see? What have I not yet? And that's it. It's not that you're doing anything wrong, or that that's actually the way that I think most people experience these cycles and these healings and these releases. That's why we have these, if you look at the moon and the cycles, which is a lot of times where we talk about these cycles, and same thing with the seasons, right? We don't just have one season, one time. We go through these cycles. The moon changes every month. Okay, it goes from learning, growing, releasing. We have these cycles constantly because that is how we're meant to learn and grow, in a cycle constantly. As we get stronger and more clarity and more understanding, that's how we learn and we grow. It doesn't end. Okay, and that's not a bad thing, because that's what we're here to do. We are here to constantly learn and grow and expand. Okay, and I'd say unfortunately, but that's kind of the same way with, if you say, well, I'm not going to deal with that, or I'm just stuck, that's just how it is. Well, then you're going to be in a different kind of cycle, right? Where you're just things are going to keep coming up and showing you, oh, by the way, this doesn't work. By the way, this person or this place or the situation, this belief, it's not helping you, right? And sometimes I say, that volume will get turned up, or something will become more dramatic or harder or more difficult or whatever. It's just trying to get your attention to say, you're not listening. I'm talking to you. Please pay attention. This is not working for you. So a lot of people, it can be uncomfortable. Certainly, I would say most of us would would say these are uncomfortable things, especially when we look at what we actually believe about ourselves and the way we've actually treated ourselves. It's really not a blame or a judgment thing. I think we can hold a lot of judgment, especially against ourselves, but it's more of an understanding. It's very easy oftentimes to see it from a friend or from someone else, or to say, well, you've done this or you've treated me this way. But it can be very tricky and uncomfortable to realize that what we've put ourselves in, what relationships we've allowed ourselves to be in. For example, if someone speaks to you in such a terrible way, very disrespectfully, really rude, whatever you may say, you can say, gosh, what's wrong with you? Why could you talk to me that way? But if you take another step and you say, well, why am I allowing myself to be spoken to that way? Is saying, well, that person's in my family, or that person is my boss, or that person is whatever. Is that enough? Is that a reason for being treated a certain way? So these are all these deeper questions to go into in these moments and say, well, what do I want in my life? Is that the kind of exchanges I want with people, or experiences or beliefs that I want to hold on to? So this is just a little bit of a deeper understanding of how to tap in. Like I said, you really kind of got to get in to understand what you want to release. Just saying, oh, I just release everything. I mean, that's a nice energy, sure, that can be helpful. But then when you say, I just want to release everything, I think you're kind of also opening yourself up to things happening for you to understand what you need to release. So if you say, oh, I want to release everything, and all of a sudden you start fighting with people, or people are being really rude to you, that's, again, kind of your answer. Well, what is my relationship with this person, or what is my experience, or, whatever the case may be. So it's good to open up to these things, but please be aware that it's just about never a one-off, and there's not a blanket that goes over all this stuff. We each have unique things for us to understand and learn from, and then release and heal from, and grow into the next level. So I hope that this was helpful. I'm sending you so much love and light. Take care.